valid, even though in many parts of our country it would be dismissed as, Chinese woo-woo nonsense, which is what we do with so many things. Like that New Yorker who, when I asked her recently what was more important, the New York Times or the Milky Way galaxy, said emphatically the New York Times. Yeah.
I mean, would you say this is fair that like someone from like rural Louisiana or Kentucky or anywhere in America, they probably don't even know all that much about China, their
Well,
philosophies, religions.
either the people in New York.
Yeah, yeah, right.
I mean, America is a very provincial country. It's, in part it's because, again, it was far away from Europe, just like Australia and New Zealand. You know what I mean? Right? And certainly far away from Asia. Yeah.
Yeah. And before the internet, that, I was just watching a video. It just popped up on my YouTube. It was the first samurais in Mexico in about the 1600s. And it took so long for that level of global trade and stuff. And so, like, I'm just talking about until now with the internet, it seems for a lot of people in my generation that we're a global, community, but it hasn't been like that for very long at all. And so,
also, even though we have the capacity to be a global community, even with the internet and jet travel and telephones and all the rest of it, right? People are still locked into an amazingly tiny way of looking at, again, our species, the collectivity of all species, the fact that we are not Americans or Mexicans or British, we are earthlings, right? And we are earthlings along with giraffes and fleas and whales. Yeah,
yeah. I don't know if it was being raised in New Mexico when I was like up until I was about 7, or if it was just the way I was raised. But there was something that even at 7 to 11 where I was like, the society doesn't make sense. And I was like, I want to find something different. And that's when I started seeking out, like Eastern religions and just culture mostly. I didn't really know much about religion then, but I started seeking out Eastern culture and I started watching a lot of, Asian movies, and I had like just a bunch of artwork in my house. And
be real, the Asian movies you were watching was largely anime.
no, they were like the old kung
When
fu
you were
movies.
7 years old, please, dude.
Yeah, no, I bought this like box set of old kung fu movies, and it was like it was like 60 old kung fu movies.
That's the same as
Yeah,
anime, as far as I'm
yeah,
concerned.
yeah.
They're horrible movies.
No, there's some good ones. There's some good ones. There's still some really good ones, even now today, that I still think are classics.
Well, again, I have never seen a kung fu movie. Now the current
Yeah.
ones are much better. By the way, there's a really Disney put out a good one. Uh, 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 Chang-Chi or Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi, yeah, I saw it in theaters. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
good. It's
It's
good.
fun.
I
It's
watched
fun.
it.
Yeah,
It's good.
that's like an anime. That's
Uh,
like an anime. That's more of
well,
like an anime than like I saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon when I was probably 8 years old. I remember seeing that for the
that's
first
right.
time.
I remember that when you were 8 years old, I was 50. So
Yeah, it wasn't very long ago. Yeah.
right. And even Crouching Tiger, it was aesthetically. I mean, the kung fu movies that I came up with in the '60s were like horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
there would be a guy with the staff through his chest coming out of his back, fighting for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Big boy, leave her alone. Fine, leave her alone.
There's this one that I was just thinking of when I said there's still some classics. It's called I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's called like the 27 chambers or the 36 chambers. Yeah, I think it's the 36
Oh,
chambers.
hey, hey, hey! What do you think? Yes, lion. Yes, old girl. Sorry, cat fight, cat fight.
No worries. My dogs just arrived too, so that's all right. Was it the Big Boy and then Risu?
And Risu.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Getting too close to each other.
Uh, yeah, and it's Big Boy wants to play. He wants
Hmm.
to play.
Yeah.
Risu just not having any of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, my cats have all warmed up to each other because so I have two cats and one of them had two babies. And so one of them is not related to the two babies at all, you know. And it's a boy cat. So at first it didn't get along with the two babies, but now it lays next to him and licks them and cleans them and they get along. But the mama cat, she was really really good at first with the kittens. You know, she was like did everything for them, cleaned them, and now she just doesn't want any part of them. And so
Right.
anytime they come around her, she's like,
Right, right,
yeah,
right. Well, that's because they still want to suck her teats, and she
yeah,
doesn't want that to happen anymore.
yeah, exactly.
And also with Big Boy, there's another cat who's coming around, another male, and
Yeah.
woke me up twice in the middle of the night with them at each other. Man, it's like Jesus Christ. Anyway,
So so I want to go back to what I was saying is like okay. So I said this at the first is not so much the religion. I didn't get any religion doing that investigation, but I feel like get a little bit of sense of the culture, at least opposed to American culture. But then I think the first time I think I ever got the most real inroad I think I've had into um, culture of Eastern culture was probably Shogun. That was probably the
uh-huh.
most impactful, substantial piece of culture that I've actually read and and delved into. You know, like more than like a movie or more than other things like
I,
that.
I,
You know, like and that I'm not talking about religion. Religion, I think that's all come later. You know,
I, well,
investigating.
also, Shogun is a pretty good book, but you have to understand also that Clavel was British officer class,
Of course.
right, who fought the Japanese.
Mhm.
So a lot of his presentation of ideas in Shogun was colored by that reference that he'd been at war with the
Yeah.
Japanese. Yeah.
It's still fiction. I still got to keep that in mind, definitely.
Right. And
Like parts, yeah,
he was in a unlike Aiken Roshi, who was in a civilian prisoner of war camp in Japan. Clavel was in a military concentration prisoner of war camp, and that was his first book was called King Rat, and it was about his experience in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, which
yeah.
was horrible, like
And
horrible.
do you think that that might have given him some biases towards them, like
I
a little
think.
bit of hatred? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, no shit. I mean, his presentation of the samurai is some of it's pretty gruesome,
mhm, yeah,
right? And maybe some samurai were like that, but not as a class, not as a caste,
yeah,
But in any event, you're right. Now, and once again, still, you read Shogun. Thank God you read the book,
mhm,
right? You didn't see the terrible serial that they
yeah. I
made
haven't.
out of the book, which was like awful. It was just awful. It was awful. Um, Once again, it was so superficial.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there is something that you can do with writing that you cannot not do with visual. The commiseration, the interaction is much more intimate on some levels. It's just
mhm,
much more intimate, much more, and therefore much more impactful.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Huh?
definitely. No, 100%. And with film, it's very hard to. I mean, a lot of movies have a overall message or an overall theme, but with books, you're able to layer in, pages and pages of really intelligent, like I don't know, like the philosophy, like
Right.
ideas
Yeah.
about life
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and with film, if you start to do that, people get bored and who knows what happens, but like it doesn't seem like that happens so much in film, and it's really hard to do that. And one film I'm thinking of is I just watched it recently, and when I was younger, I didn't understand it at all. But I watched A Clockwork Orange recently,
Oh, horrible movie. Christ,
but
what a horrible
but
movie. Yeah.
it for me in my mind, it probably is hard to explain it, but it is the best movie I've ever seen that articulates an idea and presents the idea in like a
What
fully
idea?
fledged.
What idea?
So
Chaos.
the idea is that if you take what the idea is presenting in the movie, I'm not saying this is a real idea. I'm not saying it works with life. I could just see what he was going for in the movie was that if you take away human human nature, take away free will, even if you're doing, chaotic stuff, then it makes you basically like a robot and not human. And then it just is like, what is human nature? It's like, even though people do bad shit, should we say that no one, should we take away all of that? Should we make it so that no one can do anything bad? And should we live in this rigid world, or should we allow people to
Well,
at
I mean,
least,
you're assuming that being moral is rigid. I mean, what's up
yeah,
with that? I think morality is a living thing, and we've talked about this. This is situational ethics,
mhm,
which is dynamic. It's not calcified. Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, Clockwork Orange is one of my,
yeah,
that's a horrible movie. I'm sorry
yeah.
with that movie.
The
Jeez.
what they do in the movie though is, I feel like it is a very calcified version of that, where they what they do is they do like a uh, that systematic test on them or whatever, the mind thing, so that they can't perform any bad acts. So it is rigid in that sense. What I'm saying is, in that sense, it is
But
super
again,
rigid.
the reaction to that, it was, I mean, there's some astonishingly, I mean, the rape scene in A Clockwork Orange is pretty fucking graphic, dude.
Yeah,
Right? It's like,
definitely. Yeah.
holy
Yeah, there's
shit.
a lot of graphic stuff in that, definitely.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
God damn. So
But
to me, I mean, yeah, also have to understand that movie came out when it came out and what was happening societally in America, which was a breaking away from the calcification of
norms.
again, checklist morality,
Hmm.
right? Right. And it was huge back then. So that was part of A Clockwork Orange. Yeah. But it was sort of like Lord of the Flies. Did you ever read or see Lord of the Flies?
I've never read it, but I've seen the movie, but I've never read it. And then,
The
yeah,
movie that was a pretty good. That was pretty close.
yeah,
Except, so again, the idea is, and this is an answer to the 19th century idea of the noble savage. So Lord of the Flies was to combat the idea with people like Rousseau, the philosopher Rousseau, talking about the noble savage and all that stuff. That if people are not raised with a calcified moral structure, that they will revert then to survival of the fittest,
hmm,
basically,
yeah,
right? Now, of course, without acknowledging that our moral code, right, around the world is based on survival of the fittest.
and I don't know. I think that's kind of like, maybe everyone sees it differently, but I feel like that's kind of the message of that movie, was that that morality isn't rigid. We need to have some room for unrigidity. The whole thing was that they were trying to make it so, like, psychological, they were doing psychological studies so that you couldn't have any immoral thoughts or immoral actions. And so they're like making it rigid. But I think the point was is that we are humans and we are not rigid. We should understand, obviously, there's a good and a bad. I think he's presenting that in the movie. There's good and bad, but as humans, if we were to take away all of that, the humanistic emotions that made us who we are, and we're just, we psychologically went in there
See,
and took out all of the,
I disagree with this. We have
yeah,
to, this is not about instinct or human nature, because human nature is just as compromised, right? I mean, human nature also has horrible expressions.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Human
definitely,
can also
definitely.
be evil. So again, we are talking about, so it's not about human nature, but it is coming back to a dynamic morality. You understand, right? Which is, like evolution, you know, 500 years ago, when, again, 300 years ago, shit, 200 years ago, when the infant mortality rate was 50%, you want to have a lot of kids,
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah,
true. Now, with the infant mortality rate, even though it fluctuates, the fact is it's not 50% anymore. It's more like 80%. So again, the new morality, so that our species does not overwhelm the planet the way it's doing, is to have less children. Well, both those considerations have a moral foundation to them,
mhm.
you see, but they're absolutely different.
Yeah, but I feel like most people aren't doing that, right? Most people aren't reducing the amount of children they have.
No,
Like most,
unfortunately, no,
yeah,
that is. the case. No,
But
that's
but
not.
it is a moral choice, is what you're saying. It is a moral choice.
It's a moral choice. It's
Yeah,
also a sensible choice,
yeah, yeah, a logical choice. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just an
definitely.
intelligent choice, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And, if you live on an island, you understand this instantly, that there's only a certain amount of natural resources, right? And if you plunder those resources, I mean, this is apparently what happened with Easter Island,
Yeah.
is that
So no, no, continue, continue. I was just thinking of
well,
something in my head.
the human beings that were living on Easter Island, they savaged the natural resources so much that at a certain point they warred on each other and killed a whole bunch of each other off, and then apparently they had to like canoe away because there was no more natural resources.
Yeah, yeah.
Stupid. I
It's
mean,
a,
that's
you know,
stupid.
it's an
You know,
example of us though, as a microcosm of the world. What
I
we're doing to each other.
Indeed. So
Yeah.
you see, so to say human nature is a little bit misleading, if you'll excuse me, right? I mean,
Well, I think that was kind of the question. It's questioning human nature. It's not saying anything specific of the movie, in a sense. I think it's questioning human nature, and it's not saying this is what human nature is. It's saying what is human nature, and it proposes these. For me, maybe the message isn't the greatest, and maybe the presentation of the message isn't the greatest, but the overarching, starting with the theme and the entire movie building up to that one theme, and the very end like hitting you in the head with like this is what the message of that whole movie was. Like he was, I feel like Stanley Kubrick, he's obviously a master at it, but he was able to do that better in my mind than pretty much any movie I've seen before, and that's really what I would love to do, but with a better message and a better presentation, you know.
the
But
thing is,
but
when morality was suspended, then the human nature manifestation of that was that horrible fucking rape scene. You know what I mean? Instead of, once again, why couldn't there have been a reference to, like in Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, right, with the woman feeding the starving man her breast milk?
so in the rape scene, it came before he gets psychologically taken, all of his emotions taken away.
Uh-huh,
So it was showing that he's bad, and then it's
mhm.
showing him getting his emotions taken away, and then it was showing him not being able to do anything bad. He can't even say a bad word or think about
What
anything
you're
bad.
saying is that the emotions is the thing that makes action good, and I disagree with that fundamentally. It is that it is, even if it's artificial, even if it's a secondary consideration, that it is about being moral that is the issue, not about not having emotions, you see,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's the point too. He's saying it's not the thoughts that make us bad; it's what we do. That is like the movie. He's saying it's not
Well,
these thoughts because
well, again, what generates our actions? Thoughts,
thoughts, yeah, exactly. But
right?
yeah, but so if you can't have any immoral thoughts, you can't have any immoral things. He becomes like a robot, and it's like in the movie, it's almost like kind of like sad that he can't. He's like stuck. It's like he's become a robot because he's taken away all of his anything that like even though it was terrible and terrible shit, but he can't do anything. He's like now a basically not even a
Well,
human.
that's why I don't like the movie, you
Yeah.
see? Because again, those are the options. It's either you are immoral, right? Or even amoral,
Mhm.
yeah, or you are a robot. Bullshit. What about being moral? Like really moral, which is a living, dynamic thing, which you have to take up every single day. You have to
Yeah.
consider every situation you're in, and if you do it from how can I affect good in this thing, and good being self and others are benefited by thought and action, right? Yeah. I mean, that is not presented in the movie, and that's why I don't like the
Definitely.
movie.
Yeah. No. 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 It's just presenting an idea of like if you take away you know things that make us what we are. I don't know if it makes us what we are. I don't know how to describe it. If you take away our emotions and our feelings and our thoughts, then what are we? A Clockwork Orange is like it's a mechanical orange, a clock orange. And so that's the point of the movie. It turns us into this like mechanical.
I
hybrids
understand,
were not
but
even a
I'm
human.
sorry, that is a very limited way of looking at being a being on planet Earth. I'm
Uh,
sorry.
yeah,
And I understand within the context of what was going on when that movie came out. I mean, I think that movie came out in like 1966 or something, right?
yeah, 66 or early, yeah, I think so, right on the cusp of
Right,
70s.
right, right. Well, that's when, American culture exploded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a whole bunch of it was righteous. I mean, a whole bunch of it's like, please, God Almighty. I mean, talk about being, robots that, we were all like,
Rigid and yeah,
yeah, I mean, like,
yeah.
God Almighty,
Yeah. See, I think what I think is what I like about this conversation is that the message, like you said, is not the greatest message, and then obviously the way he presents it, rape and all this shit, is not the best way. Sorry, my dog is barking. Give me one second. Shiba, come here. Shiba. So, but
I
I
mean,
really want to be,
that
yeah.
rape was kinky as shit. It was kinky, man. It was like overt porn. It was very close to a snuff film. You know what I'm saying? And it was presented as contemporary entertainment, right? That is disparaging the calcification of American culture coming out of the 1950s, which, by the way, occurred because all those people were coming out of the horror and chaos of World War II, and prior to that, the goddamn Great Depression, right?
But I don't think he's ever saying any of that's good. He's showing it, but he's not saying any of that's good. He says, like, I think it's clear that all of his actions are bad throughout the movie. He's I mean, a gangster, whatever you want to say, and he's doing nefarious, dastardly stuff the whole time. And then when he
But
gets put,
it's kind of like that serial Miami Vice, which is
yeah,
supposed to be about two vice cops,
yeah,
taking care of the tsunami of cocaine coming into Miami. Well, they glorified that.
yeah. So here's maybe I'm just thinking about it. Maybe this is why it works so well, is because so you're following this gangster, he's doing dastardly stuff, and then he gets locked up, and you're like, good. But then they do the psychological experiment on him. Even then, you're still like, good. But then you see the reaction, and it turns him into this thing that's not a human, and it juxtaposes. Even though you know everything he did was bad, you know it's all bad, it's all fucked up shit. It juxtaposes with that just to show how he becomes this Clockwork Orange. He becomes this robotic, yeah,
Yeah, dude.
yeah,
The thing that offends me and scares me is the duality, the dichotomy, the dualism. There
yeah.
is it is either being an automaton, a robot, or being immoral. It's like, wait a
I don't think
minute.
so. No. I don't think so. No. It's saying for that person, he did immoral things, which
Mhm.
was not good, and he became an automaton. But it's showing us that becoming an automaton is not good, even if he's doing bad shit. We don't want to become automatons.
I understand. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I'm saying.
yeah.
So therefore, what is quietly being upheld is it's better to be a fucking lunatic than to be an autonomous.
No. You don't want to be the lunatic, but you don't want to be an automaton either. You want to be the good. That's what I get from
But
it.
in the movie, that is not presented. That's what bugged me about the movie back when I saw it in
Yeah,
1966, which, by the way, is the only time I ever saw it.
yeah,
And I see it now. It's back now, right?
yeah.
And that Kubrick is being idolized again, right? His movies are okay. They're okay.
See, for the message, I guess it's okay, but for his in sense of filmmaking, I think he's top notch. Like nobody can really compare to him still today. But
This is the ongoing reference of somebody else said to me about some horrible thing that the person was expressing their passion, and that's art, and they should be allowed to do that. Well, there was a guy in New York who was doing a conceptual art installment in the window, a public window of an art gallery, one of the big ones, like the Whitney or some shit.
mhm.
And with a razor, he was cutting off slices of his dick.
Yeah, that's fucked up. That's bad. That should be like illegal. That should be shit
Well,
that should be like
I was expressing his passion, like,
X-rated. Like you should go to like that's not even good on you can't even find that stuff on the internet. But But so what? I like this conversation that we had. Yeah.
You can
What's
find
that?
snuff films on the internet, you know.
Yeah, you can probably find anything on the internet, I'm sure. But
So anyway, this is one of our themes, you and I. One of my complaints is I understand that calcified morality needs to be questioned, right? But the answer to that is not immorality. The
yeah,
answer to that is a dynamic
I
morality, right?
think this conversation is really important for me, and I really like where we've come to because so I said this earlier was like I really want to do what he did with that, but I want to do it in a different way, and I think I kind of understand. I had to break it down and understand what he did wrong in order to understand why I need
But
to do right.
and it's not wrong, but it's an omission that's very important. And
I think
this is where Steinbeck in The Grapes of Wrath. I mean, there's a character in there who was a preacher, and he's beautiful, by the way. He's a
mhm,
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful character. Well, he would get so filled with the Holy Spirit that if there was a young miss at the end of one of his sermons who wanted to go romp around in the bushes, man, he was airborne, baby. He would
yeah,
go romp around in the bush. So he stopped being a preacher. He had the integrity to
yeah,
say that the hypocrisy here is too profound, right? Yeah, and I gotta be me, right?
yeah,
And he was still an astonishingly moral man who just loved to romp around in the bushes. Yeah,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Right? So once again, and because of that character and because of the woman feeding a starving man her breast milk, right? Those books were banned.
yeah.
That book was banned.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
too much for people to comprehend at that point in time.
Again, and it is about dynamic morality, which
Mhm.
again is situational ethics. And again, orthodox religious morality, right, spits on situational ethics because then it says that morality is actually not a solid thing. It's not a solid thing. It's not a solid thing, right? It's a living thing. It is a dynamic thing. Now, the reason why this is so important in our time of the dynamic being cheered by us, right, as a culture,
Mhm.
right, is so that then we can come back to the consideration of being good, right? Which is essential for, again, human beings and other living creatures. Like that old hippie bumper sticker that said, war is bad for humans and all other living creatures, right?
Yeah,
So maybe we need to reconsider the validity of war. See?
yeah, definitely.
Right? Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Dynamic thing. Do you see? Yeah? Right?
yep,
Right?
no, 100%.
Right. So
Yeah,
it is good that we're talking about this, but again, one of my the heartbreaks of my lifespan is pretty much as a culture, and the reason why this is important is that our culture, right, is impacting on the world.
hmm
On the world.
yeah.
There's this new guy, this new East Indian comedian who's so hot on the internet. Well, somebody sent me one of his videos. And
Yeah.
again, to me, he's like a poor man's Louis C.K. or Chris Rock. And again, he's foul mouthed and he's cynical. And, so basically he's aping American comedic norms where you're tearing shit down, you are naysaying endlessly, right? And you're doing it with like foul mouth, just,
That's what he was doing. That he
yes.
was
Yeah,
following
like
those
so he's
cliches.
talking about his, that people being influenced by their uncle in Gujarat, which is another province in India, and he goes, "Fuck your uncle!" It's like, oh, please, please, right? Little too much Chris Rock, right? You know what
Yeah,
I mean? With
yeah.
endless naysaying. And all he's trying to do, I'm sorry, is being like an American young person, which again needs work.
Yeah,
It needs a
seriously.
little more consideration. Yeah?
There's no room for nuance of good and bad in my generation. It seems that everyone believes that it is rigid and it has to be rigid. They don't see it as nuance. like you have admitted, this is maybe an extreme example, but like you have admitted many times, Gandhi made mistakes. That doesn't make him a bad person, but that means that it's, it's elastic. These things change and warp.
Well, when I and again, an admission, it's not an admission. I mean, I still honor Gandhi for what he was able to do as a mere
Huh.
human being. You
Yeah.
feel me? Right?
Huh.
So that's hence the quote. So I shall not waste my lifespan in a vain, useless hope, seeking what cannot be. A flawless man among us all who feed off the fruits of the broad earth. If I find him, I will send you word. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
Right? Everybody is flawed. The Dalai Lama, in his astonishing excellence, and he would be the first to acknowledge that
Yeah.
he's flawed. Yeah?
Yeah.
As he does when he talks about being embarrassed about farting on an airplane, right?
But so that's my example of morality being, it shifts and it changes, and and it is not rigid, but in my sense, in my day.
Within the parameters of, in a negative way,
Definitely.
Aiken Roshi saying, don't harm, don't steal, don't exploit. You
Yeah.
understand?
Yeah.
Right? Now, within the parameters of that, which is profound, if you really bite down on that, yes, it's an astonishing statement. Now,
So the rigidity of good and bad, just in my peer group, my culture, my generation, it's so much so that you either have to be good or bad, and the fact that someone's not all the way one side, they are not, like, so Gandhi, people continuously are trying to bring him down and say he was a bad guy because of his mistakes, because of the bad things he did. And so there's no room for nuance or for, yeah,
balance.
yeah,
It's called balance, dude, and it's also
yeah,
called humility. Yeah, you
yeah,
see? Yeah, So we do not have to be perfect, but we do need to try.
yeah, hi,
I,
yeah,
yeah. Again, Gandhi imposing his version of the sexuality within Hinduism of basically just say no, of celibacy, right? Unless you can have children, is the same as Mike Pence wanting all of us to be born again Christians. I'm sorry,
yeah.
it's like fucked up. Now Mike
My
Pence,
my dog is freaking out. Sheila, come on, come back inside. Sheila, come back inside. Stop this. Barking, just nonstop at nothing.
right. So again, or recently, I understand I saw in the news that Mike Flynn was giving a speech, right, and saying that America needs to be a nation under one God. Well, I mean, that is absolutely in opposition to the founding of our nation. And again,
Separation of church and state, right?
No, not just that, but the fact is, I mean, largely the first Americans who came here from England were the Anabaptists, and they fled England because they were being mistreated as a heretic expression of Christianity,
So the
right?
people who founded our nation were trying to get away from that type of
Indeed,
thought
indeed.
process. Yeah,
Indeed, right?
yeah,
And this is why, again, we were supposed to accept all the different religious expressions, right? Now, again, the other terrible thing that we were taught within the calcification, right, of religious thought, right? Yeah, of organized religion as opposed to contemplative, mystical religion. We've done this before,
yeah,
right? Is that in that model of orthodoxy is, if we make everybody the same, then we will be safe. You
yeah.
see? Then we will be safe. As opposed to saying, if we are working with a dynamic idea of being good to each other and other beings, yes, right, that then we will be safe.
Mhm.
See? Now, in
Yeah,
the name of making everybody the same, right? Then we get things like holy wars and inquisitions, right? And again, politicians saying that we need to be all one religion in this part of the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that sound?
No, it sounds terrible. And I just want to say it's funny because that I'm pretty sure it didn't touch upon the good aspect enough, but I'm pretty sure that's like literally the point of the movie A Clockwork Orange. It's trying, it's the sameness that is not the good thing. It is
I understand, dude. I
yeah.
get it, but it didn't take it far enough.
Definitely no, and I will do better. I'll do
Good,
my own
good.
version, and I will take it farther, and I will put more emphasis on how the good and the safe. I mean, the good and the what was the other word? Make you lead to safeness.
Safety.
Yeah.
It's not nuts that we want to be safe. We are in a realm where everything eats everything else. So to want safety is not a bad thing. It's not, right? But again, the way we go about it is corrupted. I'm sorry, it is corrupted. We do not all need to be the same. First off, that's impossible.
Yeah.
That's impossible. I mean, we are made uniquely, and all beings are, by the way. We are, looking at the difference between my two cats, they are absolutely unique, yet at first glance, they look the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Well, that's because I'm a human being looking at that species. Yeah.
I mean, I hear people say like, all brown-haired guys look the same, or all, or whatever. But it's like we can get into that, that where it does kind of have like a repetition to it, or it does. But really, if we break it down, each one is extraordinarily unique in its own,
Indeed. So the idea that we are supposed to become the same, there's supposed to be this really ill-defined but terribly reinforced idea that if we are all the same, that is then where we will have safety, which is good.
Yeah. And I don't know why this has come into my mind. I guess because it has to do with like, so what came in my mind was the Stepford Wives. Have you heard of that movie? Seen that movie?
Oh, yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. And it's creating this safe community by turning everybody into the same robots of versions of each other. And I guess that kind of has to play with what we were talking about before, where
that movie was also an extension of A Clockwork Orange. It was still pushing the same thing. And again, as far as it goes, I get it, but without going the extra step, which is there is a dynamic morality that is not a calcified morality, and in investing in that, right, then we get into stuff like you do good because it feels good, and then there's an entirely different reason for doing good because it's very satisfying, right?
Yeah.
In that, I read on some online news thing about these 5 young Sikhs who found these people stranded at the bottom of a cliff face. So they undid their turbans and connected them, tied them together so that they could haul these people up.
I saw that. Right? Yeah.
Well, again, according to the orthodoxy of the Sikh religion, you do not ever, it's like Mandalorian,
the helmet. Yeah.
Don't take off you never take off your turban in public. You never do that. Well, again, that is a calcified quasi morality thing. Right, which doesn't even make any sense. But anyway, right. So and then one of the young Sikh guys said that back in 2016 he did the same thing to save a dog.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I didn't know that was a rigid rule, a rule that they had, but that makes that story much cooler because I did see the video, but I didn't even know that it's a rule. So that makes it even just like more of like a humanistic story of like, yeah, we don't have to follow these rigid paths, and we can go outside the box, and we need to sometimes. I would not call it
a humanistic story because humanism is also nihilist, if you'll excuse me, but it is a moral story. You see? It is a more, the outcome of that action, even though it went against the calcified, rigid idea of morality, right, in Orthodox Sikhism, in again, the religion of the masses, organized Sikhism, right? Yeah. And again, anyone would acknowledge with any degree of heart that in them defying that calcified expression of what is right, right? They saved a couple of people's lives, and then this one guy also saved the life of a dog.
Yeah.
Well, since the Sikhs are supposed to be vegetarian, which they aren't by and large anymore because of the influence of America on them, right? You know, the fact is that the orthodox expression of rightness, right, should easily have been overwhelmed by the fact that this young Sikh guy took it upon himself to save the life not just of human beings, but also of a dog, like your mom did with the dog.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? There are some things that are
Yes,
just,
obvious. Yeah.
yeah.
But it is so
But
lost now in the norms of our culture and the black and white of our culture that this is my sorrow, is that we're not taking it the extra step, you see? And this is why, again, reading The Grapes of Wrath, you really should read that book. It's an astonishing book, man. It's an amazing book. It just is. And now, particularly now, here we go again, where they're talking about book burning and banning books and all the rest of that stuff, man, which is absolutely the echo of the rise of the Third Reich in Germany.
seriously, yeah, seriously,
Same, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
you know,
And so,
man.
what is the book about? What's like the synopsis of
It's
it?
about a family of farmers during the Great Depression making their way to California to be migrant workers so that they can survive. It's during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing, the grapes of wrath, you understand? Because they keep bumping into these calcified communities, just like we're getting now with all these poor fucking immigrants. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
right? But these people who are fleeing their homes because it's too dangerous, you know, in terms of climate crisis, in terms of political crisis, blah, blah, of economic crisis, right? Where again, they can stay where they are and starve to death, right? Or they can go someplace else and maybe get by, right? You know, so The Grapes of Wrath is about that happening here during the Great Depression with Americans.
Yeah.
With Americans, you understand, right? So now it's an important book to be aware of, so that maybe there's a little more, you know. One of the reasons why I love The Day After Tomorrow, that movie, The Day After Tomorrow, is at the end of the movie, with all these refugees from America, Mexico accepted them.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, that's gonna happen probably one day, honestly, with the way things are going over here. But yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying. Just the the rigid morality and that everything that goes with that. And
also, we tend to only go to, if morality is made too rigid, it is dehumanizing. Therefore, right, we need to do away with morality, not do away with rigid morality and invest in a dynamic morality. See, which is called, by the way, by the ethics philosophers, situational ethics. Situational ethics. Yeah. You know, if I have one ant in my kitchen, right, I will take the ant outside. If I have an inundation of carpenter ants that are eating the walls in my garage, then I have got to become the destroyer of worlds.
Yeah,
I've basically got to napalm their asses. You know what I'm saying, right? But that doesn't mean I have to do that all the time.
Yeah, with every creature you see, oh, a spider, get the spray out. Yeah.
Right, you see? Yeah, so this is situational ethics, and it's a living thing, and it can become an art form.
Yeah, and what's dangerous about it, or what's important about this conversation, is that you take a lot of people, what they do, and what people do is they take good and bad, good, and then they leave it as a blanket statement, put it over every single situation the same way, and then it's very hard for them to articulate what is actually good or bad because it's all just one blanket
Right.
statement. There's no
Like us with the
nuance to it.
love. You know, you love your sofa. I love my chair. You also love your pets, quote unquote. You also love me. You also love your mom. You also love
Ice
the
cream or whatever.
ice cream, indeed.
Yeah.
You know, so again, this is why you and I have talked about in me coming upon the translation of karuna, right? The Sanskrit word that is so important to both Hinduism and Buddhism, right? Which is translated in English as compassion, right? And then coming upon it being translated to commiseration, which is
I thought I
very
heard a cat.
different. It's
Yeah.
very different. So
Compassion and commiseration, those are the two that were.
very different things. Two
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah. And
So
commiseration, just so I know the definition of it, it's like you are.
is basically I feel you.
Yeah.
Where compassion is, I understand your suffering. It's different. It's
Yeah.
nuanced. It's very different, right? Yeah. So again, if you're talking about loving ice cream, you do not mean that you're a commiserate with ice cream,
Yeah.
right? Right. So it's different. The word love means something different. It means that with your taste buds being stimulated, right? You
You're having
know,
a good time or whatever.
it's engaging and
Yeah.
allows you a little yum yum in the midst of life experience. Yeah. You know, but again, we use the same word love, right, to imply that. You see?
And my couch, if I love my couch, that is none of the same things as ice cream. It has nothing to do with taste buds. It has nothing to do with a tasty feeling. All of those things that you just described. It. I'm gonna open my door really fast, but
So again, this is an ongoing theme that you and I come back to. Once again, we left off kind of with our progression of talking about again what the importance of being in the present, and also what keeps us from being in the present, or being in the present in such a compromised way that it's saturated with influences of past and future, to the point where we're not even seeing what we're experiencing.
yeah.
We're experiencing it through like this fish tank of ideas and concepts and convictions and all the rest of it.
And
So
past and
then,
future,
huh?
and past and future, and our thoughts of the past and
Past
future.
and
You're
future.
not even right now yet. Yeah.
Indeed, right? So then we are not actually living life. We are then living our narrative about life,
Which
right?
is a really skewed narrative because it's usually negative. It's usually, oh,
Well,
this all
the
sucks.
other thing is that any narrative is going to shrink life down into this tiny, tiny little thing, when life is not a tiny little thing at all, at all.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean we are occurring in the middle of the expression of the Big Bang. Let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right. And you are aware that now, when I was your age, the scientific community, the astrophysicists said that the theory is that all this occurred out of the Big Bang, and that was the beginning. Well, now they're saying, au contraire, the Big Bang was like a blurb that came out of an entire other universe. So now they're talking about the multiverse,
Yeah.
which of course dovetails, excuse me, with Hindu thought and Jain thought, the Jaina religion, right? That goes back 4,000 years. Now, how did they figure that out?
With like
See?
multiple worlds
Yeah,
and
multiple
yeah, and
universes.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yes.
different gods in the different states of
Well,
existence.
never mind the gods, because the gods are just different expressions of being, whereas Brahma is the creative principle,
And
right?
so it's not really related to the different worlds, though. That's a different thing.
No. It is related to different worlds, right? But again, that happens in all worlds where there is a beginning, there is a duration, and then there is an ending.
Mhm.
So that is just personified by Brahma as the creator in Hinduism, Vishnu as the preserver, right? And by the way, all the all the avatars, the original meaning of avatar, not in a goddamn video game,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Got you. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Avatar
Is
Lokashwara, Lokashar. How do I say it? Avatar Lokash.
No, 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 no. You're right. Avalokiteshvara
Ava.
is an
Yeah.
avatar, but Avalokiteshvara means something different, and
Okay.
it means that which hears the suffering of the world. That's what that means.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of beautiful?
No,
Yeah,
it's great.
right. And it caused Avalokiteshvara, which is one of the manifestations as an avatar of Vishnu, according to the Hindu model, right? Even though Avalokiteshvara is Buddhist, it doesn't matter. It's like Christianity and
Yeah.
Judaism, right? But then it causes Vishnu not only to want to be of service and help, right, by informing masses of our kind primarily to be good,
Yeah.
to be good,
And
right?
well, you were talking about how um the scientists said that there's multiple dimensions, and somehow these guys knew that back then with their
Right, with
Jain religions and all
their
those.
world systems
Yeah.
that again are breathing, and that this manifestation of being is part of an endless process that has no beginning and no end. Eternity, that is
Mm.
eternity. Huh? Now, so and then Shiva is as the arch yogi, right? Because again, once you invest in the singularity, right? And I mean that in an astrophysics way, as in black hole, right? Then life as we know it stops. It stops.
Yeah. Yeah. Who
So
knows what happens inside the singularity, right? Nothing
indeed,
can escape or
right.
whatever.
So far as what we know, you
Yeah.
see,
I think
so
they
far
did.
as,
I think they did just observe some light escaping a black hole,
right. Well,
something
again,
like that. But that's a yeah.
right. Well, Suzuki Roshi was right. Not always so. There is
Yeah.
always exception. There's always exception, right? I mean, I killed a mouse this summer that either Big Boy or Risu had caught and broken its back, and it was still alive. And it was writhing in agony. So on one hand, we have thou shalt not kill, right? As a general norm, that's a keeper. Of course, none of us do that. We kill endlessly, right? So I killed that mouse. I did that knowingly, consciously. I killed that mouse. Yeah. So would you say that that was a bad thing to do?
No, well, I think it's like it takes situational ethics, like you were just doing. If you are like my crazy mom over here who tells me to flush every mice she sees down the toilet, that might be a little extreme, But I think if if you don't kill all of the mice you see, and then you have to kill one mice because of the severe circumstances, I think that's a little bit more of a rational situation, where nuanced situation, critically
Took
critically
mouse to
attended
have
to.
a back operation, right? Which would, no vet would do anyway, right? The fact is, I had a choice in that situational circumstance where there was this little being writhing in agony. I mean, oh God, it was just horrible to behold, man.
I mean,
And that's
there's
not going to stop until it died.
yeah,
See?
there's nothing else you could do, right? There's literally nothing else you could do. Yeah, you could leave
Right?
it there and walk away, but that's almost worse.
By the way, Orthodox Hinduism would say no. You need to leave the mouse there. It's working out karma. Well,
And
fuck that.
and that's
Yeah.
also kind of like what like the outdoors people, and like all of like National Geographic and stuff, when they see, when they go out into the wild and they observe it, never interact with it. It's
No,
always just observe it,
I,
but
I think that is arrogant beyond expression. Arrogant beyond expression. Did you see my octopus teacher? Did you see that?
no, but the one on Netflix, right?
Yeah, the one on
Yeah, no,
Netflix.
I haven't seen it yet. No.
This human being finally gains enough humility to have wonder about this unbelievable other being. Yet, when the other being is attacked by a shark and one of its tentacles, right? It doesn't help him. He could have scared that shark away. The shark could have gone and ate something else, right? And when the octopus is dying, he's observing it. You know, if it was a human being, he would have cradled her in his arms.
Yeah.
You see?
For me,
Right?
that the only thing that comes to my mind is with great power comes great responsibility. You know, we have this ability to help and change, and there are situations where that might, you know, like that. I think that would the only thing that is good would be to help. You know, like you don't have to be that observer and just let nature take its course when you have the ability to help and to change. You know.
Right. That, you know, I saw part of a TV show where this white actor says, "Well, we're a very diverse group, but I'm not allowed to say that." It's like, oh, Jesus Christ, you know,
So
you're
here's
part of the diverse. You know, I mean,
I was thinking of an analogy in my mind, and I don't know if it's good or bad, so I'm going to ask you about it. Like, I'll see my cat walking outside, and I know it's a path. It's going to go outside and go run around for the day. And so sometimes I'll pick it up and I'll put it on the couch as it's going outside, and then its path for that day is completely changed. It doesn't go outside. Now it's looking over here, starts playing with a dog. It chills, and it was me interacting with that completely changed the path of that animal's life for at least the next foreseeable hour or two, you know?
right,
And
right.
and we can, it doesn't have to be for good or bad, but it just we do have the ability to
Okay, but
change,
it
you know?
can't be for good or bad, is the
Yeah.
point. You see?
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you intermix the fact that goodness can be art form, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be, you know, I mean, imagine how the world would be if humanity, each
Seriously.
one of us said, let me see, what good can I do today? That's
Yeah.
what I'm going to make the priority of my days. How much good can I make happen? How do you think that might impact on the way our world is?
I feel like a lot more people would be happy to be here, you know?
And just people?
Yeah, like, seriously, life forms, creatures,
Indeed,
animals. Yeah.
indeed, indeed. Now, we spit on that as an idea. That is naive. That is woo-woo.
It's
That,
impossible. That's what people say to me.
you know, right? Well, I'm sorry. It is none of those things, and it takes great focus, and it takes
Right?
great strength to do that, man.
And
It's not.
it's difficult.
Huh?
Yeah, it'd be an immense challenge for all of us, and people bat it down like it's an impossibility or like it'd be, you know, it'd be too easy, but it's not. It would be very difficult for the whole world to come together and do that. So I think it
Well,
would be a challenge. It's something worthy of you know of trying to attain rather than just a cheap, you know, like
Well, in the
anybody could do it.
meantime, instead of talking it, right? Let's attempt to walk it with the understanding that we'll fail all the time. But there's a story about a storm has happened and all these starfish get washed up on this beach, right?
Mhm.
Hundreds of them, and they're all dying, right? So this little girl is walking along the beach, and every now and again she throws one of the starfish back in the ocean.
Yeah.
And an adult comes up to her and says, well, that's not going to help. Look at all these starfish that are still dying. She said, tell that to the ones I throw back in.
Seriously.
And
Yeah.
suppose that fucking adult, right, instead of dissing her, right, also picked up some starfish.
Yeah,
Yeah?
he spent that same amount of energy saying that she was doing it was a waste of time and actually use that same amount of energy to help, you know.
And again, you do good because it feels good. The very first class I taught as a teacher, right, back when I was 25, maybe 26, your age, yeah? And the name of my course, it was voluntary, I didn't make any money, right? And it was an elective course and it was called Dynamic Ethics. So I told you this story. Me and a bunch, back then it was long hair, right? So there was a bunch of teenagers with long hair. And on a Saturday, we went up to one of these state parks with a shitload of plastic bags. It shouldn't have been plastic bags, should have been paper bags.
Yeah.
We tried. You understand? Right. So we're all picking up garbage, and two state cop cars come up with sirens going and the whole thing, right? Right. And this cop gets out in his, brass ass, Sadacar kind of way from Dune. What are you guys doing here? And I say, these kids are from Ramapo High School, and I'm a teacher, and this is our class, and what we're doing is we're cleaning up garbage. And the cops went, really? And we go, yeah, really, right? And the kids are all like, oh shit, it's the cops.
We're getting in trouble, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting, right? And all the cops are being very copish. Well, then the cops talk to each other, and then one gets on the radio and says, we're going to take our lunch hour now. And all four of the cops from the 2 squad cars, they help us clean up garbage.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's so awesome.
Just the shit. Yeah. So in that moment, the cops weren't disdaining these young long hairs, and the young long hairs were not disdaining the cops, right? In that moment, there was there was harmony, and in that harmonious state, we all then picked up garbage together, which beautified Mother Earth in that one little place. Yes? Yeah. Right? No. So that is the idea of dynamic ethics. Yeah? Right? Of situational ethics. Yes, bro?
Yeah, it was those guys making just a small choice to take a break and help, which actually made, a beautiful, unique moment in time where it's like almost sacred, where you are making the world better.
I remember you asked me beautifully, what do you think is sacred? My idea of sacred is where beings are benefited. That any act where beings are benefited is a sacred act. And why do I make it that much of a big deal? Because there's so little of it.
Yeah.
I mean, Cameron sent me this beautiful video of this young man and a couple of them with those huge nets that are collecting plastic.
Yeah.
Sacred. That is a sacred act. Yeah.
Before I go, I just want to ask one last question. Have you seen that movie, Hacksaw Ridge?
No. It sounds like a movie I wouldn't see.
Yeah, it just came out. It's Andrew Garfield. So this guy, I think it's a real story, but it's in war. It's one of the wars where he's drafted into the war, and he refuses to fight because he's a Christian or something like that. He doesn't want to do it. And so they allow him to be a medic, and he goes into the war without a gun.
Be a Quaker.
Maybe, I don't know. He goes into the war without a gun, and then he ends up saving this entire battalion by pulling each person off of a cliff and carrying them down single-handedly, and he ends up like saving everything. And it's actually a good movie about just like what is good, like morality, and what is the real good and bad in light of what everybody's telling you should be doing. What should we,
like back in the day when the draft was happening and I was getting drafted, and people said, well, look, you're living in an ashram, you're vegetarian, so can't you say that this is a religious conviction like Quakers who are pacifists? Mm-hmm. And my answer to that was no. I could be a medic and help the soldiers who were being shot and blown up to smithereens. I could do that. So no, I cannot say that I'm a conscientious objector, right? So I was 1A. I thought I was going to Vietnam until Dirty Dick Nixon did the lottery. 283. That was my number.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And I was saved. Yeah. Right, where a bunch of my friends weren't, and several of them died. Yeah, right. Yeah. All of this is lunacy. So without, if we say that, that morality is calcified, and then it can become an expression of evil. That is absolutely true, right? But we therefore do not say, therefore we have no morality, and that's where we're headed.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah. No, definitely, because people are so confused. Yeah.
Man, that just scares the shit out of me, man.
Yeah. So I think that's really important for me, and that's what I really want to try to do in a story, is try to present, just those concepts. But for me, it's important to do it in a way that's enticing for the general audience, because I don't want to just,
The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
At one point, that beautiful East Indian actress, I can't remember her name now, right? But she's talking to her dad, right? And they're talking about Eddie Murphy. And she says, he doesn't believe in anything. And her dad goes, and yet he does what's right.
Yeah.
See, mwah, that is beautiful. That is situation ethics. See, that's beautiful. Even with him doing, I want the knife, right? All
But
that
just
stuff.
not having any convictions, but still doing the right thing in light of.
Right, his idea of right was still there. It
Yeah,
was not
yes, yeah,
calcified right.
yeah,
Right?
right.
Yes. You know,
Yes, yeah.
remember when he says to the dad also, he goes, so in according to your religion, right, the short road to enlightenment, there's no right? And then he goes, well, is there a long road to enlightenment?
That was good. Yeah, I just watched it recently. Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, there's some very good stuff in that movie about real living morality. Remember when he took the scroll? He said, smoke it. That scroll looks like I'm going to smoke this, right? At the very beginning.
Yeah, and these are things that could be taken as like a blasphemous almost, but
Right.
in a world of situational ethics, we can understand how it.
No, in the world of calcified morality, it is viewed as blasphemy. In the world of a dynamic living good, right? No, the fact is there's also humor in that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. When I was in India at the pump getting water, I told you this story, right? There were a bunch of ants who were stuck on this island. So I took a twig and I made a bridge for them. And I stood up and they went across the bridge. They got off the island, right? They went back to the peninsula, right? So I stand up and I'm proud of myself and I step back and I step on a bunch of ants.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
So should I have not made the bridge?
I mean that's the story that I've asked you before about the guy who mine was more complicated, and obviously there's flaws in it, but the message was the same thing. It's about the kid who saves his horses from drowning and ends up flooding the neighbor's yard, or flooding the neighbor's, and he washes away the neighbor's horses. And in the act of goodness, should he not have done something good, or like obviously there's another there's another way to do that, but
so the answer is he didn't think it through enough.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and same with you stepping on the ants, right? It wasn't thought of through. Yeah, but it didn't take the good act and make it bad.
Hi. It took the good act and made it compromised only because of my own inattention.
Hi. Yeah.
See? But the act of making the bridge in and of itself was a good, situationally speaking, was a good act.
And just to be honest with the situation, and stepping on those other ants was not good. It was negligence.
Dude, you fucked up. See? Right? Yeah. So in that, it is an imperfect world. And both you and I know that at a certain point, both the ants that I stepped on and the ants that went across the bridge, they're all going to die anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. But still, that doesn't mean you don't do anything. Doesn't mean you don't act.
So then the question is why? And the question is then, like our metaphor of the train station in the middle of a snowstorm, right? Then there are nows that are articulated with as much goodness as possible, and therefore the beings in that situ, right, are safe, right? And then maybe they're a little bit happier and less likely to do damage to each other. And then maybe in that leisure, the question of the great matter of birth and death might then be reconsidered a little bit. Again, when we are in a state of awe, isn't that a great state to be in?
Yes. Hi.
Yes. Hi.
Yeah, we can be like that, I think, a lot more often than we give ourselves credit for.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah. It's not hard. It's not hard.
Yeah. I will leave it on this last thing is because we're a little bit over time, but when Chris Shatner, what's his name? Captain Kirk.
Oh,
William Shatner. Yeah, when he cried because he went through the ionosphere into space, and then he was like, it was the most profound, moment experience. And then I was telling you about it, and you're like, at nighttime, there is no ionosphere. You don't see that space between, and then it made me realize, like, yeah, we all experience that every single day. Like
That's why in the X-Men with Jean, the latest one, Dark Phoenix.
mhm.
Dark Phoenix. When that alien then changes the living room into living space, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, we
real.
can do that with our minds. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is real. That is what's happening right now in your living room, in my living room. That is happening. Yeah?
Hi. Yeah. Yeah. And another one was like, we are basically living in the Avatar world, but we have so many filters over it. We don't look at it like we're living in the Avatar, where everything's shiny and blue and all. That is what we're seeing, but we're just so
So this
used
is
to it.
Herbert again. What senses do we lack that we cannot see a whole new world all around us? The answer is we don't need different senses. We need to polish, shine the senses that we have by applying a little bit of humility, right, to our saying that we get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in Big Trouble in Little China, you were not put upon this earth to get it, Mr. Burton. Yes.
That was good. Very good. All right. I'll see you next week.
Next week. Yes. Good.
All right.
Good.
Cool.
You do look a lot better, dude. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. And that little dog, just beautiful.
He's so cute, man. He's such a cutie.
Yeah.
He's so cute.
All right. Much love to you.
Love to you. Hi.
All right. Bye.